Lexington.
I can speak to the minor changes between,
Okay.
it's mostly formatting and
Yeah.
kind of packaging it up.
Sounds good.
Dan, it's 7 on the computer. Do you want to wait?
No, sorry.
It's better than the cost of the house.
I'm gonna turn the microphone on.
Then
Stop.
Okay.
Yep.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, Belchertown. Welcome to the January 28, 2025 meeting of your planning board. Tonight we have a limited agenda, but we have an important conversation to take place. We've got one A&R, which is a minor subdivision review on Eskett Road for Mr. Mileski. And then we've got a presentation and discussion from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, who are helping us update the community plan, community facilities section. So this is the community facilities section of the town master plan, which is being updated. They're going to make their initial report. I'm not sure if it's ready to go to the select board yet or not, but we're going to start with us, and then the next one that we go to is the select board. Then we were going to just take a brief review of the last tax classification scheme that came out of the Board of Assessors. It was approved, I think, 4 weeks ago, 2 meetings ago, by the select board. We have any additions with the consent of the members? Minutes? Bills? I see no bills. Town plan report. Mr. Doug Duke?
Doug's saying no sound.
Oh, he's on.
Yeah.
Doug is saying no sound.
Yeah,
So he cannot hear us.
right.
that happened the last time I tried to go remote. We wanted, but that's phone sitting over here.
The mic is on.
The owl is looking at me, so the owl is on.
Yeah.
He says to send
How
a
about
unmute request.
That's what I'm sending him so he can talk.
Oh,
how about the other representative from PVPC? Can you hear us?
Well,
That's so he's.
Oh, that's it.
if you don't want people.
And the answer is yes.
a miracle.
Yes, you can.
Technology's working.
Okay, I got it.
All right,
there he is.
All right. Our technical difficulty has been mended, and so the town planner is available to do his report. We got vendor's report, and we have no timed event, so we can move right to our guest. And he's given us a nice color version copy of his latest version of his report. Would you like to brief us on your report, sir?
Yes. So thank you, members of the planning board. My name is Kyle Finnell. I'm a senior planner in the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. I was here last fall, August, September, to give you an update on this project. And I have a brief little slide deck that I'd like to share just to walk us through the update. We are close to being done with the project, and you have some draft language to review, and hopefully we have some time to discuss some of the latter sections of the document, which are vacant right now because I'm here for your insight and input, and just want to get that on the presentation on the virtual meeting so that the audience can follow along, so bear with me. Okay. So, as I mentioned, we're very close to being done with this project. For everyone's recollection, this is an update to the community plans chapter on public facilities and services. So this is a community facilities and services update to the town's master plan. This project was funded through district local technical assistance. That's a state allocation from the governor's office, executive office of housing and livable communities. That grant was for the calendar year 2024, so that grant has run out, and we're here to get final feedback and final product. The goal would be to welcome feedback through a conversation this evening, and then over the next few days as you digest and review the formatted version that we circulated today, so that you can have this final product for your review and adoption in February. So this would be the 5th update to the community plan, and there remains several large sections of the community plan that have not been updated since 2009, just for context in the broader master plan document. So I've received feedback from town planner Doug Albertson that's already incorporated into the latest formatted version. You will find in sections 2, 3, and 4, there might be a few highlighted little pieces. Those are some things that I just need to clarify, flags that Doug raised for me, that we just want to make sure are accurate in the final version of the plan. Again, tonight's goal is to review some of those sections, field any questions that you may have identified as you reviewed the document that was shared over the weekend, mostly just text, and then really spending a lot of time on goals and strategies that the planning board would like to prioritize for the community facilities and services, and implementation elements such as who would be a responsible party in the town, when do you think that would be a realistic time frame to accomplish those goals, etc. So, quick review of the contents of the plan. There are 6 sections. Section 1 is really an overview, which provides context for the community facilities and services update. Section 2 is the existing conditions that inventories existing infrastructure, facilities, and services. Section 3, challenges and opportunities, is an analysis of priority concerns and opportunities to address issues that may have been identified in review of those existing conditions and thinking about the future of the town. Section 4 is adaptive reuse in town-owned properties. This section provides examples of successful adaptive reuse in town and across the region, along with a survey summary. So last time I was before the planning board, we discussed a community engagement strategy. We released an online survey that had a list of 13 priority properties that have been identified with planning board assistance and select board input and review of past planning projects. So we released that community survey online for 3 weeks, 23 days or so. A summary of that feedback and the responses to that online survey are in section 4. So that's like a property by property kind of summary of what residents think. Again, section 5 and 6 will be hopefully the bulk of the conversation tonight. Section 5, goals and strategies, examples of success. I'm sorry, that was typo. Goals and strategies are broad goals for community facilities and services, along with strategies to achieve said goals. And then section 6 is the implementation matrix. So that will really just be a reformatting of section 5 into a master table that's a little bit easier to read and follow. So I'm happy to work through section by section, allow the planning board to raise questions that they may see. In the latest version before you, minimal changes to sections 2, 3, and 4. There were some additions in section 3. In section 2, I wanted to make sure that we included details on all school buildings. Schools are an uncommon element within facilities and services. Some communities choose to not necessarily ignore or avoid, but they choose to kind of omit that topic from a master plan element like this. some communities that, particularly smaller or more rural communities where the school department represents a large percentage of the annual town budget, oftentimes those communities want to point or draw attention to that topic and talk it out in the master plan. So,
What's the advantage for a town that it's not a huge percentage? What's the advantage of ignoring the school system entirely? Is it trying to just keep from clouding the issue, or is it just that their problems and issues are unrelated to the town itself?
right. I would say, I wouldn't necessarily consider this an advantage, but I believe oftentimes the thinking is with school committees being the local authority over a school district and those buildings and grounds and amenities, and then the legislature being kind of the next level of authority, oftentimes in a master planning document, the decision is made that, they're almost not necessarily directly or explicitly separate from the rest of the town, but there's so much kind of autonomy or independence that oftentimes it's just excluded from a master plan document.
Because I think certainly with Belchertown, our situation,
Yeah.
I don't know that I certainly couldn't ignore or
Right.
set aside.
Right.
Okay.
And that's, given my understanding of recent conversations in town regarding the schools, I presumed that it was worthwhile to include some degree of context for this current state of the school buildings. I didn't include this datum in the report, but I believe the school buildings themselves represent, I think, upwards to like 70% of the insured property that the town is responsible for as of right now. And that's just in terms of principal structures and accessory structures that the town has, policies over.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And for this context, it's active schools as opposed to the number of properties that were schools, but
Yes, so in the existing conditions, so in section 2, it's strictly operating school buildings that are under the control of the school department. Because Belchertown has several former school buildings that are still town-owned properties, those are discussed in section 4, the adaptive reuse, because those, both Tagil and Franklin, have been identified, in various planning projects as possible structures, facilities to either reuse or to dispose. Yeah.
thank you.
So in terms of highlighted sections, if you like, just page 5, I just highlighted the plans process, just to note that we're kind of at the end. And there'll be a little bit to add there, just in terms of feedback, and whenever you finally adopt this section, we'll want to make sure that we include that to the final document. Moving along on page 7, under the section on dams located within the town, Doug offered some insight and asked to clarify if the Blackmer Walker Dam is still intact. It's not owned by the town, it's actually owned by the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission, but it's located within the town. I believe we used the data most recent from the State Board Commission, Dams Commission. So I will need to circle back and just verify if that has been removed in any recent projects or not. But that's the only flag that came out of that section.
I am flabbergasted that there's 20 dams. I had no idea there was that many.
Yeah, Well, when you think about the amount of water resources in the community and the age of the community, and also the size of the town, yeah, there are several, and many of those are, according to the state office on dams, they're of
No.
unknown status or even quality, or even in terms of like risk of failure or overflow. So a lot of those could be very old historic dams. They're on a register at the state level, but there's not a lot of monitoring happening. I can include, if it would be of interest or value to the board and you think the community, we can add a link to the latest kind of inventory from the state's level.
That would be helpful. Stuff
Right.
like that. I'm gonna guess that some of those dams are old farm lines.
Yeah, very likely. Typically, a community's hazard mitigation plan would include a larger section on this.
I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
they've got the same information, because I don't remember them highlighting any particular concern about the condition of dams in town in
Okay.
the latest report.
Yeah, I know I consulted the most recently adopted version, which I think was in the 2016 time. I haven't looked at their section on dams. I know that we're working with the community on an update currently, so I can cross-reference that, make sure that the information is in alignment. And I will include a link so that folks can get a better sense of those. I don't believe there are any other glaring omissions or additions to section 2 other than page 13, which just provides a quick summary of the 5 school buildings, showing enrollment numbers from the 2024 academic year, and then information on the buildings from the Massachusetts School Building Commission, in terms of date that the facilities were opened and total area and capacity for enrollment.
So the school does have 2 more buildings that are not being used for children's education.
Oh,
But-
yeah, yes, so, at the top of the section, I'm sorry, page 12, where we introduce the school department, I point out that the main offices are at 14 Maple Drive.
And then they still have control of the town. Do they?
The school,
Yeah,
the Tagle building?
the Tadgett building down on state property.
I didn't think so. I thought that was under EDIC, didn't it?
I,
It was too.
oh, really? Somehow in my mind, I thought that was the schools.
I believe the IT department may have been using.
They're
part of the-
physically, yeah, they
part of the
were
facility.
physically in there. But I could be wrong. Okay, I'm sorry, go on.
All right. So, starting on page 14, section 3, challenges and opportunities. We try to, in each of these topics, try to point out where the challenge lies, but also the silver lining and where there is an opportunity to address that. In section 3.1, I wanted to point out, and again, these are in no particular order of priority. These are just presented. Since a large section of the update in this project focused on the abundant town property, I went ahead and just put that at the top to also kind of prime the next section. and to speak to the fact that it's many of the properties provide an invaluable resource to the community, a lot of natural spaces. It's the underused properties, those that don't have express purpose or haven't been identified for an express purpose. That's the challenge facing the community. Do you keep those as town-owned, tax-exempt, or is there greater value disposing of those, putting those up for sale? It's just a conversation the town needs to have upon a more, I think, a more detailed inventory and kind of review of each of those properties. There will be an appendix with a table inventory of these 190. We're finalizing that. I'm noticing discrepancies upon the latest review, so it's not included currently. And there's some conservation, town-owned conservation areas that are under management from the Concom that get listed as vacant. So I just want to make sure that none of those are accidentally listed. They're, they're deed restricted. They're public resources. We don't want to confuse anybody. So. Maintaining the community plan. This master plan document is a challenge and opportunity. This particular element focuses a lot on town facilities, town property, but other elements are also relevant. Two sections of the community plan that have not been updated since 2009 are the open space recreation, sometimes called the natural resource chapter, and the transportation chapter. Neither of those have been updated since 2009, and they represent, I think, directly relevant topics, particularly with transportation infrastructure. And then with the vast amount of town-owned open space and natural spaces, the update to the natural resource open space section of the community plan would also be a valuable consideration.
Is that distinct from the open space and recreation plan that I thought had just been updated?
It is distinct. Some communities, Northampton for example, updates their open space and recreation plan as their master plan element. So that singular document serves two functions. So I don't believe it was explicitly stated as such the last time the town updated the open space rec plan, which I believe was 2001. I could be mistaken.
I can fill you in on that, Kyle.
Yeah, please.
We updated the OSRP, I think 3 or so years ago, and the board did adopt that as the open space and recreation element to the master plan.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that.
It's quite a long document.
Oh, it's very, yes, it's hundreds of pages
Yeah.
when you include all the appendices and
Right.
the assessments of conservation value of all the land. Yeah, it's an extensive document, and that's why many communities like Belchertown choose to say this is comprehensive enough. We don't need to have a 30-page document summarizing it. I don't believe it's presented as the element of the master plan on the community plan webpage. I'll circle back to that, but
Yeah, that could be the case. I'm not sure because we had a new website put in last year, and I'm not sure how things got updated or transferred.
right. That's fair. Thank you for clarifying that. That saves some work for the community. Other challenges and opportunities identified through this planning process, maintaining and improving the schools. I speak very briefly to the Javish Brook building project. Don't go into too much detail other than you got to a certain state, there was a town vote, and it didn't proceed. So just kind of left it at that. But we do speak to the fact that, you know, there is a changing school age population in town. Capital improvements and financial planning, a common challenge for more rural residential communities. This is a common addition to this section of community or master plans. Good progress is already being made because last fall the select board authorized town manager to convene capital improvements planning committee. So I believe that group's already formed and underway. Water and sewer infrastructure, also a common challenge. Building maintenance, energy efficiency, accessibility.
On the water and the sewer,
Yeah.
there's some language you used in the last sentence. Just wondering where you got it from. The primary concern for the town is aging infrastructure and needed upgrades to the sewer system.
Believe those
Was
came,
that from the DPW told you that? From the sewer commissioners?
I believe that would have come from a conversation with DPW. I did not connect with the water district directly for this. So this would have been DPW.
Well, at least for the sewer, the plant is not that old.
No.
And it's operating way below capacity, and I know everything down off of State Street has been rebuilt, and that the system around the lakes is all fairly
Right.
new. And they rebuilt everything for the state school. I thought that most of the sewer system in town was a fairly, recent construction within the last decade, maybe 15 years. And they, when they build those things, they build them to last for 30 or 40 years. I'm just wondering why, they're making it sound like that our system is in need of major overhaul, and that might limit the expansion of its use. 'Cause if the town is going to grow, and I'm sort of going to bring a conversation in here about business and industry, which seems to be a prevailing subject that is overlapping here. We need to have infrastructure available, and if we have it available, it needs to be expanded to make additional use available to bring more investment into town. But if the mindset of the people managing our town is that our system is falling apart, that seems to me to be a sort of a backward-looking concern, isn't it?
I'd agree. I am happy to review my notes, make sure that I didn't get confused and convolute topics.
Could you maybe verify that that's really what they wanted to say before we
Yes,
put it in
I will.
a report that gets, memorialized? Because it makes it sound like we have problems with our system and needed overhauling. We've made a lot of investment, within the useful life of those systems. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Now, the water system, I think that there's more of a problem of aging of some infrastructure and limitations of capacity, because I've heard that come up, is they feel that the capacity that they have for the current wells they have online is about getting tapped out, and in order for them to expand service availability, they're going to have to bring in some new wells. So maybe that's true, but that's not an aging infrastructure, that's an expansion issue. That's capacity. If it doesn't have capacity, that I think that it would say that there's limited capacity and investment needs to be made.
Do I remember that the sewer's only at about half?
I think it's only at about 30-40% of capacity of the main plant, and actually at some point that generates higher usage fees for the people on the system, because everything costs a certain amount of money,
Right.
and you, and
Being
if you
divided
have,
by half the.
if you have more people on it, the per unit actually drops, so
Hmm.
the part of the cost of the system, and then if you have more people on it too, when you do need to make upgrades, you have more capacity for financing.
Right.
Where if you have a limited usage base, it's very hard to go to your major lenders and get bonding to expand them, because they're going to say, well, how many people are hooked up to the system? And if you say, well, it's 1,200 people, that really puts a dent in your ability to be able to finance upgrades or expansions. And I'd be looking more towards expansions as we move along.
Yeah, just a point, I believe the treatment plant was built around 97, 98. And the expansion around the lakes and down to Pine Valley was a year or two after that. So 25, 27 years ago.
They build them on a 40-year timetable. That's when you usually plan for them to be replaced. So I just that sentence sort of poked at me.
That's
So I was
right.
thinking, well, who said that?
Happy to revise it. The remaining subsections of section 3, building maintenance, energy efficiency, and accessibility, speaks to just the ongoing realities of maintenance, associated costs, and the challenge of energy efficiency, but also accessibility to public facilities. Some recent upgrades are mentioned. An HVAC audit, I believe, was conducted 2024. I can verify and insert that date. And then the responsibility of just accessibility, ADA compliance. Did want to call out the value of being a green community. I think the town has been designated as such for 14, 15 years or so.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that program is very helpful in reducing municipal energy consumption and costs. And then kind of related to the accessibility part of section 3.6 is aging for planning for an aging population. Excuse me. And so that pulls in some findings from the 2021 Age and Dementia Friendly Belchertown plan. Section 4 speaks to adaptive reuse town properties. Quick summary just of the concept. It may be kind of unfamiliar terminology for the general public, but we're sitting in the prime example of adaptive reuse in Belchertown. Lawrence Memorial Hall, built as a school building, I believe the high school, I could be mistaken. But town offices for, I think, going on probably closer to 40 years, if I'm not mistaken. Is it the 80s? It was adapted. So it just points out that it's a common practice in the valley, across the region. There's, I believe, 8 or 9 examples provided. Most often, communities find either a municipal use for an existing facility. Sometimes they find an artistic or a cultural use, working with nonprofits, local cultural council. Sometimes large unused properties become mixed use. Communities like Ludlow or some of the larger cities in the region that have large old mill complexes. Oftentimes those become mixed use with commercial at the ground floor, residential above. And then some communities like to repurpose municipal facilities explicitly for housing. A very successful recent example is the Elias Brookings Apartments in Springfield. It's a fascinating little case study. And then 4.4, section 4.4 gets into the perspective that residents have on some of the town-owned properties. So it's an introduction to just the methodology, the process of engaging with the community, a little bit about how we got to a list of 13 priority properties, excuse me. Unfortunately, with a short amount of time in the early winter months, we only received 61 responses. But for the most part, I think that was valuable insight to some properties that have been discussed repeatedly through various planning projects. Under each of the properties, there's a quick little summary of kind of the top 3 responses. But at the very end of the section, on page 23, there's a very brief concluding paragraph. The natural spaces, the undeveloped properties, such as Piper Farm and the parcel on River Street, residents prefer preserving, keeping that as open space. Neither of those properties are conservation areas with conservation easements, so that's something to consider.
The one on River Street, that was taken in tax sale,
That's what I thought. I can't confirm that. But
so it came without, any
right.
restrictions on it.
Yeah. From a topography, aerial orthographic map, it seems to be an interesting little parcel, but I know that there's residents right next to it and across the street. So don't know if it's of conservation value to the town, but definitely something that residents would like to just see maintained or preserved as such.
There's not a lot that could be done with it, because that 29 acres is spread along the Swift River, and there's what they call the Riverways Act,
Yes.
which restricts any development within a certain distance of that river.
Right.
So by the time you get through drawing that line, it sort of guts any use of that property anyway.
Absolutely.
It's mainly
it's very-
used for kids, on motorbikes and stuff now, just bombing around in there.
Yeah.
And part of it also is landlocked by the railroad that comes off. I can't think of the name of that other street on the other side. Part of it's inaccessible unless you cross a live railroad.
Oh.
So not much you're going to be able to do with it.
Is that railroads?
Would it be
Railroad Street.
So for the facilities, Old Town Hall, Lawrence Memorial Hall, Finnerty House, residents overwhelmingly prefer to keep those uses current, keep it as is. For the former school buildings, both Tagel and Franklin, primarily residents are interested in a community use, a public use, but some offered opinions such as selling or letting go of the properties. There were some interesting single ideas. At Franklin School, a secondary public safety facility for the south end of town. That was one idea. The vacant lots, 51 State Street and 41 Jabish, excuse me. 51 State Street was the former family center. And 41 Jabish was the former highway barn. It's now vacant. So residents seem interested in keeping those, but adding some new use to them. There's one idea of a community pool at 41 Javish, which I thought was an original thought. For the properties that are in Carriage Grove, all of those received resident interest in commercial use, which again aligns with the master plan of that development, so it kind of makes sense.
I don't know how much reuse is gonna be realistic. You know, they're already starting the conversation on next year's budget. The finance committee is meeting, and they're already arguing over how much money is available and what expenses are there. And the school department is looking at taking cuts again. And one of the conversations that came up here a couple of weeks ago was that the town has just launched this new capital asset committee to try to look at what capital planning needs are going to be there and expenditures that, and a lot of that's going to be concentrated on existing infrastructure, on existing buildings that are in use and need roofs and things like that. Taking these older buildings and finding the money in a tight budget, when you're talking about cutting other services, I don't know how realistic that's going to be. It might be a lot more practical just to take these properties and put them on the market and let private industry, or private owner invest the money that's needed to bring them back into some type of use.
Absolutely.
Well, I think with all of these properties, there's good ideas here. We could do this, we could do that. But there needs to be some kind of executive decision made that this is what we're going to do. And it's good to get the input.
Right.
But there are the practicalities and there are the financial considerations and everything else that, yes, it would be nice to keep everything the way it was or the way I want it to be, but the realities may force a different decision. And so the executive decisions of what do we do with the buildings or the limited capital or the whatever, that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where asking for the input is fine, but then along with that there are the realities and the practicalities of actually getting it done.
Right.
I got an email from the town administrator and town manager. I did it wrong. I don't wonder how long I'm going to be doing that. And he was interested in when a draft is going to be available for the select board, because I'm sure that that's what they're thinking of too, is some decision has to be made on some of these properties right now.
Yeah.
Are we going to fix them? Or are we going to fold them? Are we going to do what? And
Well, the other
they're waiting for this report.
Yeah, if you're going to sell any of it, then that influences the budget for 2026, 2027. If there's an income stream that you've decided to take some of these properties and commercialize them, does that become an income stream that they need to think about in terms of the short-term budget?
For you to finalize this, are you looking at fleshing out the implementation page? Or is that going to be just a suggestion that's going to be made back, that's the next step for the town to take, is to figure out how implementation is going to occur?
Right. So first I would like us to discuss goals and strategies. The implementation table is really just a reformatting of Section 5.
Okay, right.
So Section 5 presented very brief examples, more or less, of some strategies related to the goals. And I broke this down goal by goal because typically this section is, you start kind of broad, abstract with a goal. Goal 1, maximize the town's existing facilities and services, right? A little bit of elaboration to ensure that town's existing facilities and services are being utilized to their greatest potential without exceeding the demands of town's occupants. Then we can start to identify the strategies, that dark bullet, which is kind of the next level, a little bit more focused. And then within that strategy, there may be specific actions that you can identify or you want to recommend. Through conversation, I would like to answer the question of who might be a lead party on these strategies, who might be supporting parties in town, what you think are a recommended time frame. That gets fleshed out more in the implementation table. This section will really just focus on the goals, strategies. Everything else will really show up in the table in section 6, which at this point is pretty empty because we want to finalize section 5 first. So as we talk this out, I just have some questions on the, just to remind ourselves of, to meet this goal of maximizing a town's existing facilities and services. What key strategies would be prioritized from the planning board's perspective? Within those strategies, what are the key actions? Again, what parties are responsible for advancing the strategy? And we can identify someone who's really in charge. On a school topic, the lead is most likely going to be the school committee, right? But there may be supporting groups, departments or committees, boards in town that have relevant information, like capital planning, for example. In terms of time frame, the structure that we like to use, of course there is an ongoing time frame where it's perpetual. It's a perennial topic of discussion, decision. There's the short term, which typically is about 2 calendar years, that allows kind of a full fiscal cycle to materialize and work through a task. Midterm is typically 3 to 5 years. And then a long-term project is going to be anything 5 to 10 to beyond. What we're wanting to include moving forward, and this was with discussion with Doug and Jen Turner from the select board, the implementation tables from various planning projects and documents are inconsistent. Some identify funding resources, some do not. Some identify responsible parties, some do not. Some even identify a metric of success, which I would also invite planning board members to think about quickly, because as this is more of a living document, the way that Belchertown likes to kind of update elements in sequence, and so it's an ongoing process of master planning. Identifying those metrics of success also gives you kind of that milestone that when the town achieves, you got a reason to celebrate, a reason to update the implementation chart, and to reprioritize. So just another topic to consider. The first example provided, strategy would be maintaining high quality educational facilities, services, and access to exemplary education for the children of Belchertown. I don't know necessarily where the school committee or the community broadly is following last year's vote on the middle school project. I know that there's still conversation of a potential need for consolidation of facilities. That's what I've heard. Nothing official. But this would be an opportunity for the planning board to recommend a strategy or an action related to that topic. It may be a new kind of feasibility or assessment of the needs. You could choose to exclude the topic and if you're not comfortable making recommendations in regards to the schools themselves.
Well, here, I don't know that I have the
I was
expertise
going to say, I
It's very,
to really say I know more than others, you know?
are there, from your perspective as board members, are there opportunities for better sharing of information or communication from school community? Is there information that you don't think is widely circulated, or the conversation isn't happening broadly across the community? That could be just an example of an action that could be taken. To my understanding, the middle school project was kind of happened more quickly than other communities. Take many, many years to get to a point of this is the school that needs the most extensive renovation or reconstruction. It's kind of an ongoing, longer project.
Well, maybe those of you who've been on the board longer than the rest of us, from what I couldn't tell, our relationship with, I mean, we were told that were the vote to have passed, that we would have to deal with the site plan approval, but I mean, to this day, we haven't actually been proactive on such things. We're more reactive to applications.
Right.
Has there been a time in the past when the planning board has
Stepped
featured?
into the business of the school committee?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
You know, although individually we may have thoughts and opinions, but as a board, no, I don't know that we're, that we are or should be telling the school what their priorities and how they should be doing their future ensuring of the quality of the facilities, et cetera. You know, certainly that's not an area that the planning board has any reason to get involved in necessarily.
I think the communication over that whole middle school thing, there was a lot of communication. You know, meeting after meeting after meeting, and matter of fact, it got to the point where people, being so exuberant about the subject that there was too much communication going on. And it came down, I think the vote was pocketbook more than anything.
Right,
And,
and
and that's something that we don't have any really say in. Your bullet, to maintain the facilities, the services, and education, I think that's the specific action. And it's up to the school committee to take the money they have and the personnel they have and propose plans to make it available and present them to the community, which I think they do a pretty good job of doing already. And it's more than anything, it boils down to a matter of money at this point. There isn't enough money to do everything they want to do.
And that did cloud the discussion in terms of what the goals were, because people began arguing about, should there be an amphitheater or whatever, and it really didn't have to do with the meaning of the proposal, but the cost. And I think, there's a sort of a gray area between communication and collaboration, and I think the communication didn't ever happen directly to us as board members, because there's not really collaboration on that at the front end of the project, at least.
Would the board consider suggesting a more comprehensive assessment of the status of all schools? just as a again, these are
You
all
wanna put something
recommendations.
in there?
I'm
That
just-
sounds perfect,
Okay.
to me anyway.
Alright, I mean,
It's-
it could be
it's-
that simple.
It's general, it's not gonna step on anybody's tail,
Right,
but it does say, nails down the essential issue.
right.
They're gonna have to do something, and someone's gonna sit down and figure it out.
I mean, in an ideal world, more collaboration might be a good thing, but boards change pretty regularly, so whether there'd be the sort of long game aspect.
I think we got that one. Let's move on.
Another recommended strategy or example strategy for your consideration under goal 1 reads, quote, in a centralized manner, inventory and develop use and reuse plans for town-owned properties to promote their highest and best use in consideration of community needs and benefits. So really this is the strategy of advancing, some of the input that we received from the community survey, but also, putting this more in the hands of, could be the capital improvement planning committee, could be the state school building grounds committee, it could be the economic development.
BDF.
I forgot it, I'm sorry.
I think the lead party should be the capital improvement committee,
Okay, yeah,
not the state schools. The state school, yeah, they've got part of that they're gonna have to do, but their focus is just one area, and we're talking about a town-wide thing. So, the capital improvement committee, that's what sort of their charge is at this point.
absolutely.
What do we have in front of us, in terms of assets, and how are we gonna utilize those assets? What kind of maintenance, what kind of improvement on them, or should we be dumping them and getting rid of them altogether?
Right.
So, that's a capital improvement.
In terms of inventory and development and reuse plans for the town-owned properties,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that Belchertown has to keep the quality of life as a critical focus in anything that we do. As a town, we don't have cheap electricity, we don't have interstate access, we don't have natural gas. What do we have to offer businesses and growth? We do have quality of life.
Right.
This is a fantastic place to bring your family and live. And so I think in terms of the reuse plans for the town-owned properties, whether it's the physical buildings or whether it's just the vacant lots, we need to, in my opinion, keep that quality of life aspect front and center if we truly want to attract growth and growth of young people, growth of families that value and are willing to pay for a good quality of life.
Right.
It includes the school, but it also includes the recreation, it includes the walkability, the trails, the everything else. So somewhere in here, I would like to see, personally, that we put in some goal that is to maintain, enhance, protect,
Right.
whatever you want to say, quality of life aspect.
You
I
want
would-
another whole bullet?
I would 100% endorse that, because the reality is that we are and are likely to continue to be the so-called bedroom community.
And yet, we don't necessarily have to be, because you could, with what we have, develop software engineering, architectural, think tank kind of
The
industries.
creative economy type thing that
Right.
that our planner is
So,
driving us.
you want another bullet?
And maybe that would be a separate bullet.
What's a separate bullet? We're gonna maintain the quality of life in the town
Yeah.
for its citizens.
We can make it such. Happy to.
It's,
And that then I think reflects more of the planning board in terms of,
Yeah.
do we zone properties, do we keep stuff in in conservation? Do we make this multifamily
Right.
type of environment? Do we push for the expansion of the sewer and the water so that we can have different developments?
Okay, so if we're gonna make it a bullet, what are the specific actions that we're talking about? And who's gonna do it? Is that's your action. What are they gonna do and who's gonna do it? How do you, how do you create the quality of life in town?
Well, and maybe it's protected,
Like-
you know, I'm put me on the spot.
Well,
And is this something that you would like to see finalized tonight, or do we have time to review this document and without too much time going by, get back to you on things that are sort of new ideas?
Absolutely. Yes, I welcome feedback beyond this evening.
okay, so we can leave
but-
that one open, move on,
Yeah,
and we'll flesh out that one for you.
I appreciate that. I
So-
made note of it, and
And
I'll try to think of some
And
things.
since we need somebody to be in charge, Mr. Doug, could you make sure that, that idea is fleshed out so it's available to them for the plan, please?
Yeah.
He says yes. Okay.
Can I backtrack and ask a dumb question, because I keep seeing the state school as town property, and it seems to me there's a lot of confusion about what the state's, it's not really town property, it's the EDIC's property, right?
The EDIC, but
So-
the EDIC is a corporation that's controlled by the town. So-
But there are people on that who are not town officials, right? They're the board.
The board of directors of the EDIC is appointed by the town
Oh,
select board.
okay. I thought there
So-
was a legislative aspect of it that in that all of the discussion about the state school, people were mistaken in how much control the town had over what
If
happens
the
there.
Nefsey property, the Lamson Brook property is not the state school EDIC property.
Okay, maybe I'm
And
just
that
conflating
belongs to
those.
the state.
Okay,
And it's leased to Nefsey, but it's owned by the state.
but the state school proper, we do
Is-
own
Is
that?
owned by EDIC.
The
Not the
EDIC is a legislative, is a
It's-
corporation that was created by a legislative
Right.
authority, but it's created as a function of the town, and that the town selects the directors on it and can remove them.
So it's
So
it's in its proper place here to be considered town
Town
property,
facilities.
it's not properly
Yes.
used. Okay, sorry, it's,
the role of the EDIC is to develop it for the benefit of the town. That's their charge. Is to further the financial interests of Belchertown. Okay?
okay, thank you.
I thought we were gonna, when that whole Barissa thing was going on, that was the argument, is, oh, who's in charge, and, technically, both of them are.
Yeah,
So
but
the
the Bursa
EDIC
project was,
is the authority, but the EDIC directors are appointed by the select board, so the select board has some ability. If they didn't agree with what the EDIC was doing, it'd step in and say, okay, you're off the board, you're fired.
all right.
We're gonna appoint new people, they're gonna do what we want them to do. Okay. Goal 2,
Goal 2?
let's move on,
Happy to.
time marches on.
So goal 2, broadly, ensure the town's departments are appropriately staffed and equipped. This is to ensure that the town's departments have the resources necessary, i.e. fleet, vehicles and equipment, staff, training, etc., to meet the service demands of the community today and tomorrow.
That's what they are doing.
The strategy presented, establish strong, proactive capital improvement planning committee to assist with the prioritization of routine and projected capital improvements. So that's kind of an easy check if it's already been established, but it's those specific tasks of creating 5-year plans for facilities.
For support parties, could you add the school committee as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I would consider this an ongoing effort. I know that there might be milestones to hit, but this really is an overdue addition to the community, since this is the first year that this group has, to my knowledge, been in existence.
Goal 3.
Any additional thoughts on ensuring town departments are appropriately staffed?
No,
Support for the,
I think the lead would be the capital improvement planning committee now with support from, the town manager and the select board.
Is that committee an appointed committee?
Yes. Well, I think most of the committee is people that are already hold positions in town, but the people that are gonna fulfill those seats are actually put on there by the select board.
Goal 3, efficiently manage the town's infrastructure. So invest in routine and capital maintenance, improvement activities, local roads, bridges, water supply, resources, etc. To minimize long-term reconstruction costs and to ensure the ongoing effective use of these assets. So an example, key strategy would be continuing to pursue federal state grants for financing these improvements and as necessary replacement of existing infrastructure. Some specific actions we've identified under that. There are funding resources such as the MassWorks infrastructure program, continuing participating in the Green Communities program, leveraging MVP action grants for critical infrastructure upgrades. Don't know if the board has a thought on lead party or support.
So who's our grant
A grant administrator.
administrator?
Our new one, Allison?
Allison.
Allison,
So
And then the supporting parties would be town manager.
And that guy up there,
And what?
our planner?
And town planner?
Probably DPW.
I was gonna say DPW. Yeah, I think
DPW.
that's right.
okay.
And well, the support would also be the capital planning committee,
Yes.
because they're the ones that are now that are gonna be the ones actually lining up and prioritizing which projects are gonna get money when.
Well, but they're not gonna pursue the grants.
No. But,
I think a lot of staff typically identify grant opportunities and or needs and look for grants to address them. So that's typically how that happens. But certainly various committees like capital planning committee would be working on stuff like that too.
it says other advantageous financing, that might be nothing more than working on whatever the borrowing is in the town when advantageous bond rates are available.
Right.
So the capital planning improvement committee is not so much focused on where the dollars come from, but rather the priorities on whatever dollar you do have needs to be spent first on this item and then over here and then over there. And it's the finance committee or it's the select board that says, well, in order to do that, we're gonna bond or we're gonna increase the budget in this area.
I don't know how you can plan for capital acquisition though without knowing how you're gonna finance it as part of the planning.
So the first thing you need to do is prioritize what is it that you need to get done.
Yeah,
And that's what the capital committee does.
all right, so you wanna hang them off?
I would leave them off on the pursuing of the funding itself.
Right.
But
You know, they can provide some input.
Right.
Okay, so for the support parts, we've got town manager, DPW.
another dumb question, do we have
Fine,
a
fine,
procurement department that does bidding and all that sort of stuff?
That does bidding,
Yeah,
you mean,
for,
when
if we're after advantageous.
it puts it out to public,
Yeah.
so that's done through the town manager.
Okay.
That does, it's at, Mass General Law, Chapter 30B. That handles the bidding for town contracting. Time frame would be ongoing.
Yes.
All right,
Any other thoughts?
let's go.
All right.
So,
So just to recap, first of all, thank you for working through the document and this process. As we finalize this section, chapter 5, it'll be more the goal and key strategies. You'll find in the matrix in section 6, in the table, that's where we'll start to really break out, identify those potential actions that are relevant. Funding resources, we'll identify the lead party and the supporting groups in town, a priority, and then a metric of success.
when are you shooting for having it final? Because that's the question that got asked us by the town manager.
I would love to have a final copy to you ready for the next meeting. I don't recall if there's a need for a public hearing for the adoption of this,
I
but
don't think so.
I don't think so. Doug?
Doug, we don't need a public meeting to adopt this, do we?
No, you don't need a public hearing, no.
Public
So-
hearing.
so
So
then-
our next meeting would be the 11th.
Right, yes. So that's 2 weeks from today.
Okay,
So if we could have, if I could have feedback in a week, would that be sufficient? I think that puts us at the 4th.
And do we channel it through Doug?
You can do it through Doug. I have my contact information here. It's kfinnell@pvtc.org. K Finnell, Finnell, @pvpc.org.
Comments by,
Feel free, if it's easier, just to send it to Doug. He knows how to get in touch with me.
I think that's what I would
That-
do.
that
well,
makes more sense.
if we're not all saying
Filter it.
the same thing, then somebody's gonna have to decide what goes on.
Is this property still on the town website?
I don't know where it would be. I don't remember seeing it on the town website. I know that, that's a good question. I don't think I've seen it on the website in terms of town-owned property. I know that, the GIS, the town GIS, you can find conservation areas and public facilities, but I don't think you can find every parcel that the town owns. So the missing pieces that will be included in the final draft, Appendix A will be the community facilities and services map. It's a standard component of this chapter. They'll identify facilities like town hall, police station, fire station, pumping stations, water treatment plant, the like. That is also gonna include all the 190 town-owned parcels. We'll highlight all of those. So that just gives a reference. It'll be similar to the map that was used for the survey. Appendix B will be that table of town-owned parcels. So that'll have the property identifier from the assessors, the acreage, street address. The owner is assumed to be town of Belchertown. And what we're trying to confirm and verify is a little note section. So the parcels that are in Carriage Grove under responsibility of EDIC, that's identified. Conservation areas are identified. Undeveloped vacant lots will be identified as such too. And then Appendix C is just a more detailed report of survey feedback. So each question has a table of responses. Any other questions for now?
No, we'll give you feedback. We hope to have the whole thing in a format, then next meeting that we can start presenting it to the select board.
Absolutely.
And they can do their thing.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for
Thanks, Al.
your help and participation. I need to stop sharing.
Doug, did you have anything else? Did you want to chime in before we let him
No,
go?
no, thanks.
It's all set. If you don't mind, then we're gonna move ahead on our business so we can get out of here. And I'm gonna look to the A&R for is it Mileski or Belechertown? One of you. Mileski. Let's go this way.
And this is one that we've already okayed, right? It just needs to be.
Just pull that out.
Oh, yeah, previously approved but not recorded.
This is already approved.
Yeah,
There's
you
two.
guys endorsed this several years ago, but they neglected.
To file.
It was never recorded at the registry.
Right here.
Then they left
Updated
Mylar,
for
so they
reapproval,
needed a Mylar.
re-recorded.
I'm sorry, Doug. I've got my hearing aids in, but I didn't understand what you said. This was previously approved, but it wasn't recorded?
Right. And they lost the Mylar, so they just needed a Mylar recorded.
And when did the minor common drive come in between?
Probably, yeah, I think it did. I would have to go back.
I've got it dated April 9th of 2021. When was the date that we went through the first iteration of the A&R was April 27th of 2021. So the timing actually was the common drive, then the first A&R that was not recorded, and now we got a second A&R that mirrors the one that we didn't get recorded.
Yeah, it's the exact same plan.
All right. So hopefully there shouldn't be too much issue. What's going on is it's listed as two lots, 5802 and 58.102, and being reconfigured as lot 2B and estate lot 2C. So the new configuration is 2B and 2C is the estate lot, and 2B is, is this pork chop over here?
Yeah.
But it's pork chop is
So the
sufficient
existing-
frontage shows.
And the common drive goes up this way,
No,
goes up 2C.
Common Drive is down here.
Oh, there it is, it says it right there.
So here's
Common
the,
drive easement is down
here's the
here.
current property line, here to here.
What the heck was the common drive for? Was then for this one and that one?
Yeah, to get back to there.
They get back to there.
So here's the existing property line is right here, the dotted line. They're gonna delete that and change the property line to go from here over. So that here's a lot and here's an estate lot. And they each have independent frontage, there's no common drive required or anything like that.
All right, so it
So-
starts at 66 feet at the road,
Yeah,
and we've got a notation here that it's 50 feet. at this point and 66 there, so it's getting a little smaller as we go along, but it's 50 feet all the way back to when it starts expanding out again.
Yeah.
So they did notate that on the plan. So you could pass that 50-foot ball right through the thing. Yeah, and the owner is listed in the, on the right-hand side of the plan in the lower. The locus is in the right side plan in the upper. All of the
Arrows up there.
adjoining property owners are identified. Don Frederick signed the plan. I just wonder why they did it with the first one but never recorded it.
Well, the explanation I got is that, the engineer, thought the applicant was going to do it, and the applicant thought the engineer was going to do it.
Okay. So there's a story that goes with it. Does anybody have any concerns or questions about this plan?
No,
I didn't look at the signatures, but
It's just
Are we-
that
are we good
one
there?
owner, and he signed the thing.
oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah.
and we don't need to know who's on the other side of 202 in terms of abutters.
No, because the property actually ends
It's on
right
public
here.
way.
Okay.
This way up
Yeah.
there, right?
Yep, I'm fine.
Me too.
I'll make a motion. Well, why don't you make it? You've got the document in your hand, you go ahead and do it.
Form A, okay. I make a motion that we endorse the plan for Robert Mileski, 474 Federal Street, map 252, lots 58.02 and 58.012, for identification purposes, creating lots 2B and estate lot 2C.
Somebody wanna,
As shown on the plan?
second that?
Yeah, as shown on the plan.
I second that.
Second. Okay, the motion's made and second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show 500, and you can sign it.
Today is,
Up here. 628.
There's a Form A1. I'll just stick that underneath. Here's a black pen.
Like we did before.
I'm gonna sign it up there.
I checked the tax list, too, and they're not on the delinquent tax list. Check that ahead of time. Okay, the tax assessment list. Once a year, the Board of Assessors prepares it and comes in and talks to the select board, and they decide whether there's going to be one tax rate or two tax rates. The two tax rates would be one on residential and one on business. Or just everybody gets charged the same rate on the property values. And they decided, as they have for as long as I can remember, to keep it as one. The things that I just wanted to point out to people is the residential value of property is 93% plus of all the property value in town. And commercial and industrial only amounts to about 4%. The rest, the few points extra, is in personal property. The commercial and industrial rate is only, it's 4%, it's negligible, and that's been the trend for years here. As a matter of fact, I thought that the residential rate was 92% last year, so it actually might be creeping up a little bit. The other thing I wanted to point out is they do attract new growth, you know, when they're trying to figure out where the budget's gonna go, and the new growth in town, about $400,000 of it per year in taxation comes from residential, and then the new growth for everything else is almost inconsequential. The average valuations of property, the average single-family house in town is worth $381,145. The average commercial is $514, and the average industrial is $191. The commercial and industrial properties aren't worth anything more than houses. We haven't got any big ticket, you know, big value business properties that are really in town. We're really,
The number you quoted was the past fiscal year, right? So the current fiscal year.
it's anemic. So, nothing else really significant in there that I wanted to make sure that people had in the back of their mind going forward. But you can see where the issues that we were talking about as far as budget issues are coming from. There's only so much new development going on. Most of that is in single-family housing, which requires a lot more services than the business and industrial, and unless the business taxation increases substantially, that's the way it's going to stay into the foreseeable future. I don't know how it would be turned around very quickly unless some miracle befell us and, you know, some big company came in here and wanted to build a massive store, and then I'm not too sure how much everybody would want it, because the rural look and feel, as you were talking about here a minute ago, is why a lot of people come here, and that's what we've heard in the past when we've talked about rezoning and trying to bring more business to town. Is a lot of people come in and say, I like it the way it is right now, thank you very much. Why are you trying to change it? And then when they get their tax bill, or we can't cover the bill for the school system, it's why don't we have more business taxation in town? Why don't we have more business income? This is the way it is right now, and you've got all the figures right in your hand, so you can digest them at your leisure.
Thank you for assembling that.
I didn't assemble, but the assessors did.
Well,
I had to sit through it, so I figured, you know, I wanted to make sure you guys got it. Let me just take care of the minutes. We'll go to town planner report. I got the minutes from January 14, 2025. They've been previously circulated. If anybody has any additional edits, revisions, deletions that they wanted to make, let them be known now. If not, I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes as written.
Second.
And seconded by Bjorn. Motion is second for discussion on the motion. Hearing none, move it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair can show 5-0-0. I'm going to pass these around for signature. It's the last page. So, Mr. Doug. We do have a card here for you. When you stop in at the office, maybe you can pick it up. The loss you had in your family. Would you like to give us your report?
Yeah, well, let's see, tomorrow evening for the MVP project, a few of us will be at the Sports Haven Mobile Home Park. So, they will be able to listen to some information from them, opinions, and there is to reroute it in a couple of places, to go around obstacles or reduce the grades, or reduce erosion. And there are presently two sort of very casual wooden structures that the snowmobiles cross wetlands on, and we plan to replace the proper bridges to all the wetlands can be what they are supposed to be. Anyway, working on that. That's due Monday. And in terms of subdivision regulations, we gave time bond to go ahead, and I imagine they'll have something to us soon. I did come up with a couple of zoning suggestions that had occurred to me in process, in conversations with the same. One of them was, last year we expanded the use for a contractor's yard, but we don't really have a definition of a contractor's yard. It's one of those things where we sort of know it when we see it, we know what we're thinking of, but when it comes to things like laws, it's got to be a little more refined than that. So I looked around for definitions, and various legal sources gave me some, so I kind of adapted to the one I gave you in the update, but I'll express it here for the record. So we might add something like a lot, building, or part of such, where vehicles, equipment, or supplies are parked, stored, and maintained for use by a contractor for construction, renovation, or another similar trade, including but not limited to landscaping, tree services, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, excavation, and the like. Begs the question, well, what's a contractor? You can go down those things forever. Another thing Dan had pointed out is that we don't really have a clear appeals process. And so that might need some language to be clarified to make it more clear, more understandable, more defined. So right now you can look at our appeals section in the bylaw, 14568, and that just describes there's a board of appeals, and they can hear and decide an appeal taken by et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the idea was to come up with a sort of a better procedure, correcting. Is that what you were thinking, more? You remember the conversation?
Are you addressing me, Doug?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that we need to propose a revision and then get it over to the ZBA, since it applies to their procedures. We would want them to be able to comment on it also before we took it to town meeting.
Yeah, so think about how that should be. And I can put together a memo to the ZBA.
Okay.
Can we go back to the contractor's yard definition?
Yep.
And I know you're saying it includes storage, staging, and inventory, but I'm thinking we need to also say it kind of excludes major fabrication or whatever. So I'm thinking incidental repairs or incidental minor fabrication or assembly would be allowed, but not a fabrication shop, not a major.
Right.
So when you think about how you define it, include the storage and staging, but kind of also say, here's what we don't want there. An entire fabrication facility as an example.
Okay, not include
So minor repairs to the lawnmower is fine, but an entire rebuilding engine facility would not, you know?
Yep,
Thank you.
yep. Yeah, not a garage per se, right.
Thank you.
I've not been by the Ware Road solar site. I don't know if they've gone in there and started to cut trees yet.
They started it today, Doug.
Yeah, good, alright.
Can
Yeah,
I?
they said they were going to, so I'm
They
glad
did.
they're doing it, in the winter.
They cut a road in there
And they
to
did,
access it.
they did a good job. They've got a lot of gravel down. They've got mats where they should. It looks like they're doing a professional job.
Good, that's encouraging.
And this is presuming that the bond issue is going to be settled? Do we have pretty
Yeah,
good?
they're not getting a building permit until that's all settled, that's for sure.
And the land was not previously in chapter, am I right about that?
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Because if it were, that would be a different kind of cutting than clear cutting for,
Yeah.
but it didn't appear to be on the deeds.
Yeah. Let's see, last item I have to report on, the Lamson Brook Farm Board had a meeting, this afternoon, and, it looks like, a lot of things are still stalled, in terms of, the original legislation, which needed to some language improvements. They have not finished agreeing on the final survey plan, so they might have a change coming in on that. Then there's, of course, the disposition question of, who the land should go to. So that's all still up in the air. There was over 30 people at one point logged into that meeting. And there was a robust discussion.
So those two pieces of legislation are different, one from the other.
Yes.
There's one that has nothing to do with the disposition, just cleaning up what came through 4 or 5 years ago. But then there's the
The original legislation 4 years ago, I guess it was, outlined 5 different components of the land and how they were to be disposed of. Now, a group of citizens had recently drafted legislation, and I don't know if it got filed or not. Yes, it did, as a House member. And that wants it to be disposed of to one specific entity or group. So, that had not been acted on, and I don't know if that's going to fly or not, but that was the discussion.
Thank you.
And, it's been good for now, thank you.
Are you all set, Doug?
Yes, I am, thank you.
All right. Leonard, is there anything you'd like to share with the board tonight?
No, nothing.
Bjorn, is there anything you'd like to share with
No,
us?
sir.
Mike?
I'm fine.
Elizabeth?
No.
Mark?
No, thank you.
The only thing that I have is, I got an email from the state ethics people saying I had to go back and take the test again. Did everybody else get the same one?
I
Yes.
got it. Yeah.
And you went back and did it?
Do
I,
by,
well,
do by May.
mine has to be done by the end of the month, so I'll do
Yeah,
it in the next couple
well,
of days.
Yeah, didn't it say the 27th? It had to be done by
Mine's 31st.
31st?
Mine was February 14th.
Okay, they're different
So
dates.
it
okay.
probably
dates.
has to do with when I took it
Yes.
last time.
Mine was yesterday, so I had to take it. It took an hour and a half,
Mhm.
and you can't scroll through it.
No.
And
I spent half a day on it the last time I did it, but I got.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can bookmark it either, so if you
Yeah.
need to leave a block of time when you go to do it, to let
Watch
the
the
whole thing
video.
run, and you can't speed it up, and it's gonna make you click every once in a while to make sure that you aren't off doing the laundry or something, you know, when you're supposed to be watching the thing. But I thought this version was better than the ones in previous.
Yeah.
That they seemed a little bit more entertaining,
When
and
was
the
the last,
questions were easier.
when was the last time you took it?
I thought I took it last year. Didn't seem like it was that long
No.
ago.
I think.
But you have to take it every 2
2
years, so
years,
maybe
yeah.
it was 2 years?
Yeah, it's every 2 years, I think.
Yeah, and
For some reason, I
the first.
remember last year having to do a certificate, though.
Right,
I-
every 2 years you have to take it, and the interim years you have to just say,
That-
I acknowledge
All
that
right,
it's
yeah,
there.
Yeah.
That's the last one that I did.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody
And
knows
this is
that,
easier than that?
that they need to fill those things out so they don't,
Yeah.
you know, let it go by, and then we get a nasty
Yeah.
grant that goes to the town clerk or something. All right.
Yeah, that was the town clerk.